The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
They say that radio is theater of the mind. You're really going to have to use your mind here because I'm about to talk about a visual which you obviously can't see if you're driving. Now, if you have your phone and you follow me on Twitter at AndyPollin1, I have retweeted the pictures that have been sent out by the team of the rendering of what the new stadium will look like. And for those of us who went to many, many games at the old place, which has finally been torn down, from the outside, it looks a lot like the old place. Not 100%, but the slope there, very much the same. Indoors, oh boy, it's going to be totally different. But if you want to feel good on this Thursday morning, take a look at these pictures sent out by the Commanders less than an hour ago. They write, rooted in memory, propelled by state-of-the-art design, the first look at our new home. And the architect, it's HKS, the lead architect. They've only been at it since November, so it's only a couple of months to come up with this. And the statement that came out from the team president, Mark Klaus, described the release of the renderings as, quote, a defining milestone in the next phase of the development process, which is, you know, the kind of thing CEOs say in statements like that. The top of the upper deck has, again, that flow to it, not quite the slope of like the old Capitol Center, but a lot like RFK, which opened in 1961. And it does have, according to a story here in the Washington Post, it has many similarities to U.S. Bank Stadium in Minneapolis. I know that when the team went there, there were a number of tweets from the beat reporters as to how beautiful it was and how they felt like it would be, you know, such a good fit, that type of stadium at the RFK site. It also, the same architect designed a U.S. Bank stadium, SoFi in Inglewood, AT&T, Jerry World, which is not that young anymore. I think Jerry World is at least, is it 15 years old? Maybe older than that. Maybe not. Yeah, I was there. Let's see. I was there in 2011. So, yeah, it's 15 years old, 15, 16 years old. Amazing. They'll be looking for a new one pretty soon. It does have a dome on it, but there's a lot of glass, and I don't know if it's 100% or not, whether it would be retractable. I would think it wouldn't be because that would add significant cost, and you're already talking about close to $4 billion. But this is really cool. This is, I can't give you the full thought of what it looks like and just kind of give you the feel.
The sun rose on a glorious day in this glorious city, our nation's capital. The Capitol and the Washington Monument in the background. This is RFK Stadium.
Yes, you can actually see that in the artist's renderings. You can see the monuments in the background. And according to their early releases, that you would be able to see the monuments from the translucent roof. And I remember when Nats Park opened, so that would be 2008, they made a big deal about, you're going to be able to see the monuments from the field. No, you can't. And one of the reasons you can't is there's this enormous building in center field, which is owned by the Lerners, which blocks the view. And, you know, not that Nats Park is bad in any way, but that big draw that they talked about being able to see the monuments, not quite there. I tell you, I was in Seattle this summer visiting my son, and we went to a Mariners game. And from where we sat, we could see the skyline of Seattle, including the Space Needle and all the other great features of it. That's a really nice thing. And, this is a feel-good on a Thursday morning. The pictures released of the artist renderings of what the new stadium will look like on the former RFK site. And again, it's supposed to be open in September of 2030. So we shall see. The breaking news, and I don't know if it's 100% done, but according to the reporting of of the various insiders, it's all but done that John Harbaugh will become the coach of the New York Giants, and it's just a matter of how they work out the contract and how much control he has over player personnel and all the various things that a coach with some leverage would want. And I played some audio yesterday of the news conference that Steve Bisciotti, the owner of the Ravens, had on Tuesday, and he said that when he talked to John Harbaugh, he suggested that he sit out a year, have a good time with your wife, travel the country, and do it on me because if you sign with another team, we've got offset in the contract, meaning the other team would pay whatever it is compared to the contract he had before, and he'd get away with not paying a lot of money, but he would have to pay him a full year's salary, whatever it is. Probably he was making $10 million a year. Go ahead and do that because you're 63. You don't want to maybe wait till you're 75 after your next job to do it. And I would just say this, if you're John Harbaugh, now you've got the leverage. If you sit out a year, now you're 64, haven't coached in a year. The last time you coached, you had a potential MVP candidate in Lamar Jackson. Didn't make the playoffs. Now he's a hot candidate. Now everybody wants him. Now's the best time. Strike while the iron's hot. And I would warn him about this. He's worked for two great organizations, the Philadelphia Eagles as an assistant under Andy Reid and the Baltimore Ravens, who under Ozzie Newsome have been a great organization and under great ownership, too. Get out of the way ownership, unlike we saw here for 24 years with Dan Snyder. Giants ownership does not appear to be as good. There have been some mistakes made. Now, the owner of the team, John Mara, is ill. I understand he has cancer. His son, Chris Mara, is running a lot of the day-to-day. So Mike Francesa, who is, I think, 1 or 1A in the most significant people in the history of sports radio, the show that he did with Chris Russo, Mike and the Mad Dog, was the gold standard and remains the gold standard in an industry that's, kind of watered down now. But back in the day when you got this kind of entertainment from the radio, not from streaming, they were the kingpins in the number one market in the country. And they made a lot of money and became very, very famous. They made a 30 for 30 out of them. Russo continues to do very well. He's on that show with Stephen A. Smith on ESPN. He's got his own show on Sirius XM. He works for the MLB Network, does a lot of things. Francesa's got a podcast now, a Bet Rivers podcast it's called. And instead of taking calls, he reads emails. And the email came the other day from someone wanting to know if he thought John Harbaugh would get the Giants job. And he ultimately gets to the answer, which includes the phrase, I don't know, which is rare for him to say, but I don't know, but my gut tells me he's going to get the job. But in getting to that, and this is just a clinic in narcissism here, in getting to his take, Mike Francesa's take, that he thinks that John Harbaugh is going to get the job, we get about 1 minute and 20 seconds of him patting himself on the back for how much money he has so he can afford this great box at Saratoga, which he mentions is in front of the Maras box at Saratoga. Again, the take on the email is, do you think John Harbaugh will get the job with the Giants? The answer is, I don't know, but my gut tells me yes. But the song and dance that goes in front of it is gold, Jerry. It's gold.
If Harbaugh doesn't want the Giant job, and you know now that Chris Mara told Ian O'Connor, who works for The Athletic, that he went and had lunch at Harbaugh's house. Okay. I'm just laying back here. There's no reason to call because listen, it's what Harbaugh is going to do, and Harbaugh's not going to tell me what he's going to do, obviously. I know Chris very well because Chris is a horse owner. He's at Saratoga every day. As a matter of fact, he sits next to my horse partner, Lee Einseidler, where Lee's box is. A couple of rows back for me. These guys like to sit a little back underneath the overhang. I like to sit in the A row because I just have always sat there, been in the same box forever. And I like the crowd. I like the finish line. I like the sunshine. So I like the whole thing from that standpoint. But he's right next to my partner Lee's box. So I see Chris all the time. And now he's taking obviously a bigger role because of John's illness. We'll see where that takes us. Hey, you know what my gut is on this with Harbaugh? First, let me say this. I just have a feeling Harbaugh is going to take it. I don't know anything. I know the Giants are optimistic. I know it's going to be very expensive and that Harbaugh wants a lot of control. I don't know where it leaves Shane, into what kind of role it leaves Shane. I don't know. Harbaugh can pretty much say, I want the sky to be yellow and I want the, sun to be blue, and he's going to get it. I mean, he's going to get whatever he wants right now.
I don't know anything, which is something he rarely says. His gut tells him that Harbaugh is going to get the job. Well, there'd been a lot of reporting leading up to that he was going to get the job. So his gut was on target there based on what he had read from others. And I also found it rare that he credited somebody else, because he doesn't do that often. But he said Ian O'Connor was the one who said that there had been a lunch between John Harbaugh and Chris Mara, who's running the team. But we also got a minute 20 of how friendly he is with the Maras and where his box sits at Saratoga in relation to the Maras box, which is behind him. No, they like the shade. I like the sun. It's where I've always sat. It's on the finish line, blah, blah. I mean, that's just gold. And, we're in the entertainment business. He's been wildly successful in his career, but that's just classic narcissistic Francesa. That he's going to tell you that he doesn't know anything, which again is rare for him to say, but doesn't know. Even if he called John Harbaugh, I don't know if he has Harbaugh's number, but he said even if he called John Harbaugh, Harbaugh wouldn't tell him whether he was taking the job or not. But also, you should know how wealthy I am and how successful I am, and that I have a box at Saratoga, which sits in front of the Maras. Well done, Mike. Well done. Mel Kiper, a much more modest man, steeped in Baltimore, right? He's lived his whole career there. He grew up there. He lived in a townhouse. At one time, he had a satellite dish on the townhouse so he could watch games. And he knows, actually, Steve Bisciotti pretty well. He knows people in the organization, including John Harbaugh, and probably could call John Harbaugh to find out. But he had an interesting take yesterday on the Unsportsmanlike show here on ESPN 630 about the difference, or really the similarities and differences in both Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin now being out after incredible long runs with their teams.
It's eerily similar, the two, Harbaugh and Tomlin. I looked at it, 12 10-win seasons for Mike Tomlin, 11 for Harbaugh. Harbaugh won a Super Bowl in year 5. Tomlin won a Super Bowl in year 2. Tomlin 19 years, Harbaugh 18 years. And I think re-energize is the word I would use for both. Whether it's go to TV like Sean Payton did for a couple years and come back, or stay out like Bill Cowher did, or like I say with John Harbaugh going wherever he goes. It's going to be, I think, better for John Harbaugh to be moving on. I think certainly in the Ravens to get another head coach. With Tomlin, I'm a little bit different there, because I think Tomlin took a team that overachieved, that nobody back in August was thinking Super Bowl. With Baltimore, they were saying Super Bowl or bust. This was a Super Bowl caliber football team in terms of personnel and talent. They were not saying that about the Steelers. So when you take a team that we always said, they're not that good, but they keep winning. They're not that good. Well, that's the coach that's elevating. So why would you blame the coach when he takes a team that really shouldn't have been there to a spot where nobody ever predicted he would be? So to me, I have more of an issue with the Tomlin situation than I do with John Harbaugh. I just felt like they needed a little bit. I think it would be good for both. If John moved on, he'll be great wherever he goes. I think the Ravens needed a change.
Interesting. I would not have looked at it that way, but essentially he's saying that, really Mike Tomlin overachieved with what he had, and John Harbaugh underachieved. Took a team. A lot of factors go into that, the injury for Lamar Jackson and so forth. But I thought that was something that was worth considering. That although they are kind of put together and will always be together in history because of their rivalry, that there were differences in both of them. Well, the biggest difference was that Mike Tomlin quit. John Harbaugh was fired. More Mel expertise. Dante Moore, the quarterback at Oregon, who's really only been a starter for 1 year. He was at UCLA his freshman year, played a little bit, didn't play at all last year as a backup at Oregon, and this year took the team to the semifinals where they got their doors blown off by Indiana. And Mel on the show yesterday before Dante Moore made his announcement, because the announcement came about 2:30 in the afternoon. Before Moore made his announcement what he's going to do next season, Mel said what he's been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks. Dante Moore just isn't ready for the NFL yet.
Dante Moore is 20 years of age with 20 starts. So that's not enough starts. History tells us that. Had he aced the course and had he gone out and really looked like he was ready, then maybe you say, okay, we'll go with that. But he didn't. And I waited until that game because I want to see how it played out. Dante had a really heck of a season considering he didn't have his offensive line intact all year. He had injuries at wide receiver. He had a guy in the portal starting at running back in that game with other running backs either injured or in the portal. So he had dealt with bad weather. And then he dealt with offensive coordinator and defense coordinator both moving on. So all those distractions for Oregon where Indiana had none. So you saw a quarterback in Mendoza, unlike Dante, who had 34 starts, 22 years of age, will be 23 in October, cut sack total down from 41 to 18, touchdowns went from 16 to 41, and at the end of the year, even with all that said, Dante still, at the end of the regular season, had a slightly higher completion percentage than Fernando Mendoza. Nobody realizes that. So they want to kill Dante for the game he had, but Dante's got a ton of talent. He's a beautiful thrower of the football. Now, another year, I think, at Oregon will benefit him tremendously, just like it did Mendoza, who had to work on some things and fix some things, which he did, and Dante admitted after that game, there's some things I need to work on and I need more reps. You have to get those reps in college, not in the NFL.
I imagine the decision was made before Mel said what he said yesterday morning, but in the afternoon, Dante Moore was apparently very much aware of Mel's advice and decided to follow it.
But yeah, with this decision, mainly all my life, it's kind of just been, being as most prepared as I can for any situation I go into. And when it comes to me just making my decision, of course, I want to feel most prepared and, this is best for my situation, especially as a quarterback. And with my decision, it's been very tough. I prayed a lot about it, talked to many people, my mentors and people I just look up to. And with that being said, of course, I'll be coming back to Oregon for one more year and being able to play for the Oregon Ducks and, of course, reach our goal and be national champions.
Well, don't say of course, because you may have to go through Indiana again, and it looks like Kirk Cignetti is reloading. But, that was a decision that makes a lot of sense. And the only thing that wouldn't make sense on this decision is because this is a draft that doesn't have a lot of quarterbacks, like it's Fernando Mendoza and everybody else, that, even if he has a good year next year, maybe a better year, there's no guarantee he'll go as high as 2 next year. I don't know what the quarterback landscape looks like, but it changes year to year now. I mean, nobody heard of Fernando Mendoza a year ago, and now it looks like he's going to be the number one pick. But you always go back to how much experience you have in college, and Bill Parcells said this decades ago when they only played 11 games during the regular season. He said, I need to have a quarterback who has at least 23 college starts, meaning that he played 2 full seasons plus. That there's a lot of background work here. And, it was very unusual for quarterbacks until probably 30 years ago, quarterbacks who would come out early. It just didn't work that way. You still have to stay 3 years, but now you can take a redshirt year. You can be a backup for a year. And if you have one good starting season, you come out, which is, one of the tragedies of Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne Haskins wasn't ready, even though he played at a high level at Ohio State, needed probably another year of college and needed more maturity in his life as well. But Dante Moore making the decision to go back to Oregon, which I guess automatically boosts Oregon into the picture again for national championship. Not that they can't reload like that, but I also saw, I want to see this, Dylan Raiola, and he must be back in the transfer portal again. Dylan Raiola had transferred from Nebraska to Oregon, and then I guess he heard that Moore was staying, so he's going to be back in the transfer portal again. And that's the wild, wild west of college football, and that's just the way it is. Coming up, Tony Romo sort of addresses the criticism that he had last week. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
A little broadcast news. You're probably aware of this, that the Nationals and MASN have finally divorced. It's been a rocky marriage for over 20 years anyway, related to the crazy deal and the way it was put together. Now, Tom Lavero insists, and Tom is very well connected on these kind of things, that when they made the deal so that the Nationals could come here from Montreal and be a part of a television network that was controlled by Peter Angelos, would have both the Orioles and the Nationals on it, that baseball thought that Angelos would die soon enough. And he wound up, living to his mid-90s. And through the course of his life, they were like in court all the time because even though the deal spelled out the financial terms, there was disagreement, mainly from the Orioles, as to how much was owed. And it went to a court decision where it was determined that, the Orioles owe them $300 million. And, went back and forth that way. It was never a great relationship. I did some freelance work for MASN. They were nice people, paid okay. And, the broadcasts were good. They had good people on it. Bob Carpenter just retired, so they say they're looking for a new announcer for the games. Apparently, Kevin Franz is going to stay as the analyst. I don't know about Dan Kolko. I've read where they're looking to hire a new sideline reporter. Dan's done a lot of different things, and he did some fill-in. I don't know if he will have a role in this. My friend Mark Zuckerman had tweeted out that he's out. He did a lot of writing for MASN and also was part of the TV coverage pre- and post-game. I hope there's something for him. He's covered this team since they came here. Covered them for the Washington Times. Nobody knows more about the Nationals than Mark Zuckerman. There's got to be a role for him somewhere in either media or with the team. If I were somebody with the team, I'd hire him because nobody knows more about the team. He goes back pre-Lerner ownership when Major League Baseball owned it. So I hope that he resurfaces somewhere, and I'm sure he will. But this new deal, this is a little confusing for somebody like me. Here's how it's described. They'll be available, all the games, all 162, will be available to stream through Major League Baseball, and this is done through Major League Baseball, the way this new TV deal is set up, on a direct consumer platform. They also say they will air on cable and satellite for fans in the area. I'm still a cable guy. I need to have it on my cable, but I'm not paying $19.99 a month for this. Not going to do it. Not with a team like this. You put a really competitive team on the field, maybe. But that's not going to happen here. So finally, this is this is pretty much across the country. These regional sports networks like MASN, and I guess MASN's going to survive with just the Orioles maybe for another year. I can't imagine that's going to go much longer because they're already struggling with the two teams. I can't imagine that they're going to make it with one. But this is common throughout Major League Baseball, not in the big markets like the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Cubs and all. They have different deals. It's different. But the other teams are just not making money on these regional sports networks. So this was inevitable that it was going to happen, and be a different way to watch the games next year. But they will have a new announcer. Apparently, Kevin Franzen is going to stay. And I don't know what the role is going to be for Dan Kolko, another good guy. I hope he finds something in the organization. Speaking of broadcasting, Tony Romo has been criticized in recent years, and it's been ramped up year after year after year, and it reached a point this past weekend with the playoff game where he was just taking a beating on social media. He was saying things that did not make sense. And it's getting to the point, and I hope it's not the case, but you do wonder about CTE. And, you also wonder about his preparation. Like when he first started, this was what made him that he could predict plays. Romo Stadamos is what Jim Nantz used to call him. And he was a sensation. Everybody's talking, oh, man, he knows the play before it's going to happen. And he played it right. He was in the right position. His contract came up at the right time with CBS, and they managed to come up with a deal that pays him $1 million a game. And that reset the market. So that's what Troy Aikman makes. Tom Brady makes $37.5 million. Those numbers are because of Romo. But Romo ain't Romo anymore. And Adam Shine, who also works for CBS. So what you're going to hear here is about a minute and a half of a very slurpy interview. But I would excuse Adam in this regard. He works for CBS, and Tony Romo works for CBS. So he's not going to say, hey, Tony, what happened, man? That sucked. That's not the way he's going to go. But I think he does a pretty good job here in setting it up so that Romo can at least maybe have an explanation for why he was just so bad last weekend in the Buffalo-Jacksonville game. And I didn't. This is the first time this came out. Apparently, Romo was sick going into the game.
By the way, you referenced it earlier. Were you fighting an illness in the game on Sunday?
Oh, yeah. We had a bunch of guys sick, but, yeah, we were just grinding through. But you're not going to miss a playoff game. It's too much fun. And, by the way, we got a few records. It's been fun watching them. And our whole crew and everyone gets so excited about it. It's fun to watch. It's a good one. It's always special when you get a bunch of people watching. So it is playoff season, so it's important.
It really doesn't get better. And listen, you guys are fantastic. The crew is great. Listen, you played quarterback for the Cowboys, so you understand the highs and, the coverage and the conversation. I'm curious, do you ever pay attention to that? You know how I feel about you as an analyst and your crew and, Jim Rickoff and Mike Arnold, the absolute best in the business. You pay attention to the highs when things are going well, or pay attention to, people online during the postseason or during any conversation about Tony Romo as a broadcaster?
I think anytime you're in a position like we are, we're on the air for 3.5 hours, there's always, you're always trying to do the best you can and everything, and then there's always going to be moments where there's always great stuff and then other stuff. It's just part of being in your position. You just go back to work and you do a great job. I mean, that's the fun part about this is it's sports, and it makes it fun. We're just trying to make everyone enjoy the show and learn a little bit and have a great time. So to me, it's what makes sports amazing. It's fun.
Again, a lot of slurping in there. You know what I think of you. We think great. I understand that. But he did set him up so that at least he could address the criticism. I don't think Romo's done any other interviews. The sick part, is that an excuse? I don't know. He's certainly not the first guy to work sick on the air. If that was a problem for him, that didn't seem to be a factor in his performance. But giving him the chance to address that, I thought was well done by Adam Schein. Given the circumstance, he's a CBS employee. He can't say, "Man, what happened to you?" No, that's not the way that works. But that's the most information we have, as far as I know, from what was a brutal game for him. Quarterbacks moving into this weekend. We got some with experience like Josh Allen and Matthew Stafford, and then we got Caleb Williams, who is going to be starting his first playoff game, Drake May, who's going to be starting his first playoff game. So what do we expect? What do we expect about performances of guys who haven't been there and some guys who have been there, like Josh Allen, and in the minds of many have underachieved? He is yet to get the Bills to the Super Bowl, and they've had their opportunities. Is this the year? Maybe so. They got to do it on the road. They're going to be playing at Denver in the first game on Saturday afternoon at 4:30, and the Broncos are favored by 1.5 at home. Can he do that? You got Brock Purdy, who's been there, and he's going to have to do it on the road at Seattle. Seahawks are favored by 7 in that game. C.J. Stroud has started a playoff game before. He's going to start another one at New England, where Drake May hasn't played. But New England's favored by 3 at home, and they're talking about snow there. And then the brutally cold game. They're talking about this being possibly the coldest game ever played. There's a debate whether it was the Cincinnati-San Diego AFC Championship game in 1982 or whether it was the Ice Bowl in 1967 on New Year's Eve in Green Bay. Either one. Cold as it could be. This one could be colder, and you got the Rams going in there. And by the way, this thing about warm weather teams, they're not used to the cold and all that. Mark May told me this years ago. He played in Arizona, and he said, we were working out of the brutal heat, and we have a chance to play a game in a cold weather site. We actually welcome that, and we're probably in better shape because we've been working out in the heat. So it's not always, nobody's used to it when it's 10 below. You just got to deal with it. And we'll see. We'll see how Matthew Stafford does. He spent all of his career, or the early part anyway, the first 2/3 of it in Detroit, but he played indoors. It's not like he was playing in the Detroit cold, and now he's been in Los Angeles, and he's indoors again. But he's going to be outdoors, and it's going to be cold. As for the performances of quarterbacks in the postseason versus the regular season. Pretty good breakdown yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show with Alex Smith.
I mean, I think a lot has to go right in this scenario. Like, I'm thinking about Justin Herbert when you said that, and I know he's 0 for 3 in the playoffs, and people are talking about this and that, but like, I mean, he didn't have it. He was overmatched in that game, right? And against the Patriots, and as beat up as the Chargers were, limping into the playoffs. I know they were hoping to be more competitive in that game, but going across the country on the road, like, and we're just going to pin that all on him. I think in some ways, again, when you step back and look at the job he did, like, for them to even be in that position, I think was, in some ways remarkable, right? I think that was a positive, but it's the nature of the quarterback position. You know this, right? Like, we get in these big moments, these winner take all one game scenarios, right? Quarterbacks, obviously, I think when your team wins and you play well, this is where you become legendary, right? Like, this is where that kind of stuff happens. And so what goes into that, right? Like, what I think, again, the 10 guys in the huddle, the matchup, the system, right? Like, the position you're put in has a huge part of that. But then obviously the guys got to go out there and make the plays. At the same time, I think about Josh Allen, right? Like, incredible playoff numbers, just absolutely incredible playoff numbers. But, up until now, it's the guy that can't get it done, right? Like that's the stuff you hear, right? Yeah. Like he can't get there. And which is that because of Josh, right? Like that's insane to say when you actually go look at the play. Like there's not much else he could do. And yet we want to pin that on the quarterback. So sometimes I think that kind of narrative is pretty unfair.
How would you defend Josh Allen if you're Denver?
Good luck. It's tough. It's really tough. Listen, I mean, I think, when you look at them from an offensive standpoint and you think about the weapons and who you need to shut down, obviously it's the best run game in football, and a lot of it starts up front with that, right? James Cook obviously had a phenomenal year. Josh is a big part of that run game. From there, you kind of move to their tight ends, right? Like, they're pretty dynamic, both those tight ends, Kincaid and Knox. So much of what they do is tied into the run game with play action pass, right? And over the middle. And so how are you going to take those guys away? They don't have big contributors on the outside, right? Like they kind of piece it together on the outside, right? And I know they just lost a couple guys to injury. And so you're going to be piecing it together even more. So it's interesting when you got a guy like Patrick Surtain, right? Like who's he going to go take away? Like, they don't necessarily, these aren't feature guys for them that play outside. And then your instinct would be to play some man, right? Certainly, because you're not necessarily afraid of some of these matchups I just talked about in coverage. However, I think Josh is kind of the guy that would really deter you from that, right? Like, you don't want a lot of backs turned running in coverage with this guy and the ball in his hands, right? He can really make some big plays with his legs. He can really extend plays. It's hard to cover that long. So he's the biggest deterrent against that. And I do think you're going to see a heavy dose. You're going to see them spy him a lot in this game, right? Let's not let him get going again. Think about last year's playoff game against the Denver Broncos on that fourth down. He runs around for 8 seconds and dots the running back in the back of the end zone for that phenomenal play, right? Like, I think if you're the Broncos, like, we're not letting that happen again. Right. We got to have some eyes on him. We got to have some defenders tracking him down.
That's Alex Smith on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday. He's a really good studio analyst. And unfortunately, he's not going to wind up on the Fox show because he doesn't guffaw loud enough. CBS, yeah. I mean, could he be a Matt Ryan replacement? I think that's possible. He's on ESPN. I rarely watch that, to be honest with you. The pregame show that they have there. But that's been holding its own for a long time, and he's really insightful. He just isn't a yeller and a screamer, and that may not qualify him for the ultimate success in pregame shows. Kyle Brandt still with the NFL Network, though I believe there's going to be a merger with ESPN at some point. He's really talented. He's funny. He writes very well. His delivery is very good. He was on with Rich Eisen yesterday here on ESPN 630, and Brandt is from Chicago, big Bears fan, and if you listen here, it sounds like a lot of us as fans of the Commanders felt last year watching Jaden Daniels, the oh wow factor, and this was Brandt describing what it's like to see his now second-year quarterback take his team into the divisional round and playing a home game against the LA Rams on Sunday night.
2024, the Bears had just lost to the Packers on a last-second blocked field goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting in that chair next to you saying, they're turning me into a serial killer. I don't feel anything. I don't feel anger. I don't feel disappointment. They're making me Dexter. I have no feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the fourth quarter of the other night, it was Costner. Is this heaven? It's Iowa. Is this heaven? It's the wild card round. And I don't care. It actually felt like a Super Bowl. Real feelings, real emotions. And that's just the game, Rich, before you even get into the aftermath with Ben Johnson doing his thing. It's a really crazy fun time to have any connection to the Bears.
Well, again, you doing what you do for a living means you have talked about Patrick Mahomes more than most and over the years. And having a fandom for a team that is in constant search for the quarterback. And for the difference-making quarterback. And I'm wondering, what does it feel like to see a guy in a Chicago Bears uniform make a throw like the one that Williams made on 4th and 8, that if Mahomes did it, the NFL media would have demanded a national holiday happen on the spot? That Caleb Williams is doing it 100% for the Bears in a playoff game when they have to have it, against the Green Bay Packers in front of the whole country to see. It's got to be out of body for you. It is out of body. And the Mahomes comparison is apt because I remember a huge part of the Mahomes ascension and legend was him hitting Tyreek Hill on a 4th and improbable in a must-win game. And when he hit that pass to Hill, you're like, he's unbeatable. He's supposed to lose. And that was the game against the Packers. And that's the Caleb lore now, is that there were 6 or 7 moments in that game where you say, well, this one's over. Just change the channel. This was the most famous one, the 4th down. But there's 50 other ones that they just kind of fought through. And it's surreal. It's strange. I think there's Bears fans, and you would understand this, Rich, with your Jets roots, is that there's just so much scar tissue. They can't get over it. Even in the 4th quarter, when they're starting to come back, they still gravitate towards the negative, and something's going to go wrong and something's going to happen. And it's just, it really feels like it's some work of magic that it isn't supposed. DJ Moore in the same spot, in the same end zone, the last time he beat the Packers is making the same catch. And it's just so much scar tissue that's being ripped open, but it's a wonderful, wonderful pain, and it's really special.
That's Kyle Brandt yesterday on Rich Eisen's show. And, I got a cousin who's a 40-year Bears season ticket holder, and I sat with him at the game here where Bears should have lost. That fumble by Bill late in the game was the killer. They would have been able to run out the clock, and the fortunes of the teams changed just like it did last year with the Hail Mary. But yeah, I kind of relate to what Kyle Brandt is saying there, and as a fan of this team, right? I mean, the scar tissue that you feel, and now it's scarred up again with what we had this past season with a 5-win year. So that's kind of goes with the territory. By the way, this was cool yesterday. Art Rooney, the owner of the Steelers, spoke for the first time about Mike Tomlin leaving the team, and had lots of great things to say about Mike Tomlin. But this is great. Somebody asked him about the future of Aaron Rodgers, and Art Rooney said, quote, "Aaron came here to play for Mike. I think it will affect his decision." Meaning, yeah, it was Mike's guy. And we put up with the Michigas with him. We got to the playoffs, but in the end, we lost 30-6. He's 42 years old. I'm not going through that song and dance that we went through last offseason. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Is he going to show up for minicamp? Is he not? Forget it. It's going to be a new coach, and it's going to be a new quarterback. And it's going to be somebody that they hope to build around. In fact, Jerry Dulac, who's been covering the team forever for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, was on yesterday with Dan Patrick. I'll play some of that in the next hour. Coming up, Steve Young on how to battle the elements. That's next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
I know Snoop Dogg is in his 50s, but I'm just too old to get it. But apparently the response for his appearance, NBA game, part of the broadcast on Peacock last week, is getting pretty good reviews, he said. Again, I don't get it, but there's an Associated Press story that I saw this morning about how he is helping Peacock grow as a sports network, and he did a game between the Clippers and the Golden State Warriors. So you got the marquee effect of Steph in that, and you know, Clippers, James Harden and Kawhi and all that. But the review is that it went really well, and he was working with Reggie Miller, who's, I think, a very good analyst, and Terry Gannon, who was a sixth man on that 1983 North Carolina State basketball team, has become a very good announcer in his own right, does a lot of golf, a lot of sports, and they pulled this off with people looking at Snoop's contribution as good. He only appeared in the second half, but they said he showed up very early. He was in the meetings with the coaches. He asked good questions. He sat in the production meetings and with Steve Kerr and Tyronn Lue. He lingered near the Golden State Warriors locker room, occasionally dancing at his own music, patiently waiting to interview Steph Curry a couple hours before the game. And, you know, they felt like, okay, he's authentic. He's not just a celebrity showing up to do an NBA game. This was part of his contribution last week.
They don't play the way I played in the 80s. You're supposed to go down and set up. Post up. Come on, big fella. You're 7 feet tall. Go in the paint. Shot clock. Look at this, man. This is what basketball has become.
Yes. Welcome.
That's hardly news. That's Gannon saying welcome. Yeah, the big. It's not a big man's game. The big man backing down on the post doesn't work. It's not Shaq's game anymore. It's more the 3-point shooting, and the big men like Victor Wembanyama shoot threes. Still, the feeling was that he was a big part of making this successful, and they plan to use him more. NBC's going to use him during the Olympics. And Snoop grew up in Los Angeles, said he used to listen to Chick Hearn. And with his gray suit, he wore a pair of purple sneakers with gold laces as an homage to the Los Angeles Lakers. So good for him on that. And, you know, some people like it. It's not my cup of tea, but adding Snoop to the broadcast apparently is not a bad way to go if you're looking to attract people. And, again, it's this crossover here where you got Peacock, which is primarily an entertainment network, and yet you are adding in someone who's kind of crosses over. His association is with entertainment, but he's also very well versed in sports, and I think his son played college football or something like that. So anyway, that's that. Steve Young yesterday on PTI, and they were talking about ball security. We'll get to the ball security that they're going to have to face in Chicago on Sunday night when the temperature is going to be 15 below with wind chill. But yet C.J. Stroud, whose team has advanced, and Houston will be playing at New England. Also talking about snow in New England in the early game on Sunday. That'll be a 3 o'clock kickoff. But Houston survived in advance despite the fact that C.J. Stroud was having trouble hanging on to the ball. And when Steve Young made his weekly appearance on PTI last night, that was the subject. How do you hang on to the football?
Well, the challenge, of course, is that unlike accuracy, you can't teach accuracy. You can teach ball security. You can, in the offseason, 2 hands on the ball. When you go to move in the pocket, you can get better at it. And CJ obviously needs to get better at that, but that can't happen this week. The other problem that we have with more dynamic quarterbacks is the second that the most intense moment in the pocket happens as you realize, I got to go. And then as you start to go, if you don't protect the football, it's now exposed. And so a lot of times, the more dynamic the game is from a quarterback position, the more likely you're going to have the ball on the ground. And that's why, again, going back to just drilling, that's the key to making sure that you're better in the pocket with the ball. And look, CJ's got another problem. He's big enough, like Ben Roethlisberger, where he can stiff arm the lineman. He's the 6th lineman, right? He's like, here, take that. Now with one arm, I'm going to rip it. And that exposes the ball as well. So CJ's got 2 problems. He's dynamic, he can get out, and he's big enough to stiff arm the offensive lineman and put it at risk.
I would think wind and cold might have something to do with ball security, but Matt Stafford tells Jim Gray He loves the wind and the cold, and he's going to be just fine in Chicago. Steve, you've played in that stuff. Does any quarterback love the wind and the cold?
The cold, nobody. If you're down under 10 degrees Fahrenheit, no one's going to be happy. It's a pain. And the ball gets slippery. It's like no one's going to say, oh, I'm great at that. But the wind and the rain are both related to why you like. It's not like, oh, I can't wait to play in the wind or the rain. But you can kind of be neutral about it. Like, it's fine. Because the way you throw the football is you throw with your fingers, where other guys will throw with their hand. I don't know any other way to describe it. And when the hand throwers struggle because they lose the grip, and Tom Brady talked about this over the weekend about how to throw in the wind. Now, that was a good little repertoire about it, but you've got to have the nose down. And the only way to get the nose going down the way you want it to is to come out of your fingers. And so the most accurate passers generally are great in wind and in rain. Ooh. And that's why they kind of go together.
Do you remember that game in Chicago? I think Joe started. I'm not sure if you even played in it, but the NFC Championship game where it was like 0. Do you remember that game?
-28 wind chill. That was a remarkable game. And 28-3, the Bears never got off their back. They never, as good as they were, they never got off their back. It was a rough ride for them.
So much for the cold for the California boys. The Patriots face a very fierce Texans pass rush with an offensive line. If it's not shaky, it seems vulnerable. How would you approach that challenge?
What you do is want to be a sitting duck. And so it's all the aspects of it, right? It's like, I remember we used to kind of attack the defensive linemen, make them worry. Like all of a sudden we bring Brent Jones down in motion, and then he would, block the tackle out of nowhere. I don't know if the play even worked, but it made the tackle the whole day think, where are you guys coming from? Kind of slowed things down. You want to get that. You want to be third and short, of course. You don't want to have long yardage. The quarterback's got to get on the move, get out of the pocket, kind of change the rally point. So in many ways, the toughest job in the world is play quarterback behind a line that's, against the best defensive lines in the league. And this defensive line doesn't have 1 star. It's got 4 stars. And in that way, they come relentlessly at you, and that makes it super difficult. So you better, to me, run the football, right? Everyone says, what's the answer in football? Run it. Well, that's a way to handle this kind of a dilemma. And then 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15, you're going to be in a jam. You don't want to be in that 10, if you want to be in third down 12 times, 9 of them need to be shorter than 5 yards. That'd be amazing. That's
so this defense too, Steve, this defense is that good? There's no hype involved with what you see?
Yeah, they're integrated. They're not just a bunch of good athletes. They're integrated in how they play defense, and they pass it off, and they work together. It's like a symbiotic kind of feel. That's the most dangerous. Those great Raven defenses, they were all integrated. It's like they all work together. It's like they thought like avatars, like they were connected, and you couldn't beat them because they knew what was coming kind of as a group. They didn't play individual defense, and so I think they're that good.
We will get you out of here on this. You can't get through an interview about football without Wilbon talking about his Bears, which of course you watched him do just now.
But
we will talk about your team. Talk about your team, the 49ers. George Kittle is the latest Niner to go out. What does the loss of a player like that mean on a macro and a micro level to a quarterback like Brock Purdy?
Well, the macro level is that, he's the face of the 49ers. With Fred Warner, with the experience, coming out of the locker room, in the locker room, leadership, on the field, like he's the guy that people, he'll rally people, he'll make a speech, those are all big aspects that you lose in the macro level. And then also, in a micro level, he's the guy that is all pro tight end. And when you have an all pro tight end, there's nothing greater as a quarterback to have an all pro tight end because the proximity of all the plays are nearer to you. Jerry Rice is out there 30 yards. It's not as intimate, right? It's like, I'm 3rd and 4 and I need somebody to get open. Like I want that all pro tight end to kind of go up and rub against the linebacker, turn around and throw him the ball and get another first down. So missing George is a problem. The issue for the 49ers, though, it feels like injuries with Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, like this whole year has been so injury prone that it was the bug in the system. But suddenly after last week's game, it feels like it's the feature. Like, yeah, we lost George Kittle, but how do we respond? We rally and go beat people on the road in the playoffs. So I'm not meaning anything about George. It's amazing. It's a terrible loss. But the 49ers seem to be a team that's kind of figures out a way to rally and go get it done.
Steve Young yesterday on PTI with analysis of the 4 playoff games that we'll see this weekend. There's a story breaking from ESPN, and I really don't know how to look at this because years and years ago, when gambling was illegal, sports betting was illegal except in the casinos, there was some lobbying, and there was lobbyists who actually came to see me at the old station, sat down with me for like an hour to explain all this, that if we had legalized gambling, then you would flag, possible point shaving, other infractions. They would be flagged by, Vegas saying, oh, look at all this money that's bet on some obscure school or some obscure player in a prop bet, and they'd be able to catch it. So maybe this is a result of that, or maybe it's a result of gambling being so pervasive. But David Purdom has the story. It broke again within the last hour. He says 20 men have been charged in a point-shaving scheme involving more than 39 college basketball players on more than 17 Division I teams, leading to more than 29 games being fixed, according to a federal indictment. These are players who played 2 years ago, 23-24, last season, 24-25, and some of them have been playing this season. We'll see what becomes of some of the indictments. Antonio Blakeney, former NBA player, was named but not charged in the indictment. He's being charged, as they say, elsewhere. I don't know exactly what that means, but this is the gist of it, according to Purdom. The scheme, according to the indictment, began around September of 2022. Initially was focused on fixing games in the Chinese Basketball Association. The group later targeted college basketball games, offering bribes to college players ranging from $10,000 to $30,000 to compromise games for betting purposes, according to the indictment. Now, you hear about these big salaries that college basketball players and football players are being paid, not all of them. And $30,000 is a significant amount of money. And I would imagine that goes to the point guard because he's got the ball in his hands. And he can, make it look like he's throwing a really good pass, but throw it out of bounds. Free throws can be missed, things like that. So, this is, this is a problem. And point shaving in college basketball goes back to 1951, CCNY. CCNY, in those days, you could compete in both the NCAA tournament and the NIT, and they won both. They're the only team to win both. And a year or so after they won the championship, the investigations began, and it was determined that these guys took money. They took money to shave points, and not only were the titles taken away, but these guys were banned from the NBA. That wouldn't happen today, but they were banned. They were banned from playing professional basketball. Of course, their college eligibility was gone, and in some cases, they took, even for those days, really relatively small amount of money, $300 or $400, and that's what was one of the biggest scandals that we've ever had in college basketball, CCNY. It happened later on in the 70s at Boston College. There was a player that went to jail. If you've seen Goodfellas, there was a lot of that referenced in that movie, that they were fixing games with Boston College in those days. And I look at this like, oh, my God, look at this widespread betting. It's got to be the result of the legalized gambling. On the other hand, it could be that all this was going on for years and years and years, and it wasn't flagged. Because with betting, under the table betting or bookie betting, there's no way to track if there was an inordinate amount of money bet on a particular player or a particular game. Now that they have the ability to flag it, are they getting caught? It's just a question: is it happening more, or are we just finding out about it more? And there's a lot more that we have to find out about this story, but that's widespread. That's a lot of players. That's a lot of games. 29 games being fixed over a 2-year period. Yeah, that's some pretty serious stuff. We'll see where it goes. Maybe it goes nowhere. We're not going to see, oh, no, bad idea. We went to sports gambling. We're going to have to do away with it. No, that's not going to happen. There's just too much money coming through the door. But this is what it leads to. And it's going to lead to, when they finally look at these players, something very, very serious for them. Will he be banned for life? Who knows? Who knows how the modern punishment works? But it's not good. And then this. Let's finish with this. The transfer portal, which is under discussion in football, and I think that you have the transfer portal open now, and the season doesn't conclude until Monday. It's really bizarre. Now they're working with basketball, and the latest is that the transfer portal for men's and women's basketball in college will open the day after the championship game, which is usually the first few days of April, and will remain open for only 15 days. So it's going to be kind of a mad rush here. The NCAA Division I cabinet approved the changes yesterday to the window for athletes to transfer in several sports, including wrestling, ice hockey, and women's track and field, men's and women's track and field, under recommendations. The 15-day period for transfers after a head coaching change starts 5 days after a new coach is hired or publicly announced. If the new head coach is not announced within 30 days of the last coach's departure, the transfer window opens on the 31st day. So, teams, obviously, they're not going to make changes immediately after the championship game, but you can transfer, and let's say they wait, a month or so to make a coaching change, then you have 30 days to transfer. This is another important point of what's going on now. Mid-year transfers will not be eligible to compete at a second school if they enrolled at an NCAA school during the first academic term, whether they competed there or not. So, you couldn't transfer from Maryland to Georgetown in between semesters, even if you didn't compete in the first semester at Maryland. So that's going to cut out that. But that's only Division I. So, or no, NCAA school. But that could be, if you're in an NAIA school, you could transfer to Division I. I mean, the whole thing is still so wild, wild west. They're trying to get their arms around it, but it's really hard to do. And now this latest with this point-shaving scandal where they've talked about 29 games being fixed over the last 2 years. Not a good spot. Not a good spot to be in. All right, good spot now for me because tomorrow's Friday, and we'll see what transpires with the John Harbaugh decision today. Looks like he's all but done with the Giants, and the question is, will the Commanders hire a defensive coordinator before the end of the week? They talked to Brian Flores, according to reports yesterday. We'll see where that goes. All right, Bram is up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.